What sort of things do you argue about with your friends? What sort of things do you argue about with your brothers or sisters? Or with your mum or dad? Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to Journey with Story. We all argue from time to time with our friends and family, don't we? And sometimes our arguments are about the silliest of things, like whose turn it is to do the dishes, or take the dog for a walk, or who forgot to put the packed lunches in the car. Well, today's episode is a tale from China about a fox, a hare, and a toad who have a huge argument. Now, what on earth could these three animals have to argue about? Let's find out. But before we begin, remember, if you go to www.journeywithstory.com and click on Story Pack, you can access some great storytime perks for your listener, such as colouring sheets and some free bonus audio episodes. Now, let's take a journey with the fox, the hare, and the toad have an argument. One day a fox, a hare, and a toad were resting themselves under a tree in the forest. In the course of their conversation, they fell to disputing among themselves as to who could trace the longest line of descent. The fox said, "Bow low and listen to what I say. My ancestors lived during the great Han dynasty, as you can see by referring to the classics. Which of you can boast of such a long line of descent, I should like to know? You must therefore acknowledge that my family is superior to any of yours." The hare sat on his haunches and stroked his whiskers. Scarcely had the fox finished when he burst into a loud laugh, "Ha, ha, ha!" and said, "You are quite an upstart, and like all of that class, you make yourself ridiculous. Long before the Han dynasty was ever dreamed of, there was a moon, you must acknowledge. If you look at the moon on any clear night, you will see a cinnamon tree, beneath which is a hare pounding medicines in a mortar. This is my distinguished forebear. It seems to me you must admit that my family line is the longest and the most respectable." The fox was silent, but the toad laughed until the tears ran down his cheeks. And it was some time before he could sober himself sufficiently to tell his story. "Long before ever the moon existed, and when the heavens were first formed out of chaos, there lived three brother toads. One of them met his death by being crushed beneath one of the pillars of heaven. Another died when Pandora melted the 5 stones with which she repaired a rip in the heavens. And the third was killed when the first Emperor of Chu built his great palace. How can I avoid laughing when I hear such upstarts as you two make claims to a long line and respectability?" Now, while the toad was boasting of his noble ancestors, a tiger had slyly joined the group, and when the toad had finished speaking, the tiger quietly stretched out his paw and brushed the toad to one side with a sniff of contempt. "Oh, Mr. Tiger," said the toad, "we are not discussing feats of strength, my most noble sir. We are talking about respectability." "Well now," replied the tiger, "since you have such a contempt for strength, perhaps you can tell me what would happen to you if I were to place a single one of my paws on you and keep it there for a few days." The toad thought deeply for a moment, and then he answered, "I could easily live by swallowing my own saliva, for toads rarely partake of anything else. But my noble sir, may I ask, what would become of you while you were holding me under your paw? For tigers, unlike toads, must have more material nourishment than saliva. I greatly fear that you would starve to death." The tiger could not reply to this argument, and he turned and walked away. The fox, the hare, and the toad waited until the tiger was well out of sight. Then they laughed till their sides shook at the clever answer of the toad. When they calmed down, they all agreed that the best thing for them to do was to disappear into the forest themselves before the tiger had time to think the whole thing over and decide to come back and enjoy a good supper. Well, does this story remind you of any other stories you've heard recently on our podcast? Yes, remember last month we had a story about a clever little frog who tricked a big hungry tiger? What do you think the story's souvenir is for both these stories? Yes, I bet nearly all of you said something like, even though you may be small, you can still do great things using your cleverness and quick thinking. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.